That's why we have all these senses: smell, taste, touch, sight. It's literally for you to experience as much life as possible. That's why you could feel the different sensations between your hands and your feet. And if something lands on your skin, you're supposed to experience as much life as you possibly can. But whenever you're holding on to something, this has all of your attention. Now it's almost like your body's numb. You can't feel anything else anymore. You're not experiencing life. It's not as fun. If you let it go, oh, I can smell and taste and touch. And
back into the sensory. Welcome everyone to the Eons Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Alex Wolfe. And on the show, we like to have deep, intimate conversations with amazing people that are eons ahead. But what does it mean to be eons ahead? Well, it means they're ahead of their time and they see things other people don't see, and they're able to communicate these visions to the world and manifest them into reality, making a positive impact for humanity. They're doing things that most people are not doing. They're often pioneers, trailblazers, conscious thought leaders. And our guest today is definitely one of those. His name is Mike Gonzalez. After graduating from the University of Penn State, Mike discovered his passion for mixed martial arts. And he immersed himself in training despite never having any experience in any individual sport of any kind. And despite many setbacks, including tearing his ACL and fracturing his arm, Mike persevered, becoming an amateur champion and eventually a professional mixed martial artist, which is no easy task. However, during the COVID lockdowns, Mike realized that he was using fighting to mask his unhappiness. So stepping away from the sport, he went on a self-discovery journey where he went inside and found his true happiness. And now he guides others to do the same. He uses techniques of self-mastery that were once used to give himself a competitive edge, but now he uses it to guide others to who they truly are inside. He's truly eons ahead. He's a good friend. He's here today. Mike Gonzalez.
yes, happy to be here with you, brother.
Happy to be here with you too, brother. It's good to see you here.
Yeah.
We were just saying, we met at Garen Jones' retreat a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And you were the first person I met there.
Yeah.
And
How awesome is that?
It was awesome. I was like, hey, this is a good start. This guy's got great energy. He's very chill, very cool.
Yeah.
And I could tell that this was somebody that is willing to do the work.
Yeah. And I felt like that same vibe from you. Like it's like a presence of like knowing who you are and just feeling that sameness is what drew me to you. I was like, oh man, like I could tell that you reached to this state by just choosing to connect with you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a resonance there, and I appreciate that. And I felt the same from you. So it's really cool to get that reflection. And once I found out that you were a professional mixed martial artist, I was like, oh, cool. You know, it makes sense why there's the resonance here, as martial arts played such a big factor in my life, my adult life, and my teenage life, but definitely in my adult life. There was a big season for me. I was into it for about 8 or 9 years, and it did so many good things for me, discipline and confidence, and it really helped me not only physically get in really good shape, but helped my mental health, helped me emotionally. It was a healthy outlet for me. And even on a spiritual level, it helped as well. You know, I'm sure you get all this. So let's go back to when you got into martial arts. And if, you know, for anybody out there that's thinking about getting into martial arts, what are some of the great things that it did for you, Mike?
For me, training, like you said, it brought out that discipline aspect because I didn't know what to do with my energy at the time, especially like when I was in college. So like I just, like with everybody, we all need something to do. So that gave me a purpose to aim my energy at. And that purpose was towards finding ways to elevate every aspect of me. And it was mentally, physically, and I didn't fully understand the emotional side yet. But like you said, hidden in that is the spiritual aspect in which the emotional is kind of tied to. And it's disguised in the form of like, okay, I want to get better in competition. So, you know, you find these little ways to do that, and that's like eating better. And eating better, which at the time was like, I'm gonna hold off on junk food.
Right.
But then it starts to like pay attention to like your body. And it also got me to really let go of distractions. that was like the biggest aspect of really acknowledging like what's not serving me in the path that I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed me to unleash my determination in the way that I knew was possible, but I just didn't have anything to unleash it towards.
Mm-hmm. So now you've started focusing in on something, and in this time of your life, it was fighting.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I'm gonna unleash all this energy that I have and put it towards on a target of fighting. And you did that so well. You became an amateur champion relatively quickly too, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So like, I started training pretty late. Like I started right after I graduated from Penn State, like end of 2010, 2011. And I found like UFC on this very, very low budget channel because like now UFC is popular, but at the time, like it was illegal in New York, like it wasn't allowed in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I saw it and I knew I always wanted to train in something. I just didn't know what.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw it, I was like, this is a sport. Like I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately it was like, that's what I'm going to do.
It clicked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found a place in New Jersey, and then I knew like the more I started to train, I started to hear like people would start like at 7 and at 8 and 9. I'm just like, okay, I have like some ground to cover.
Right.
Like,
because at this point you're like what, 22, 23?
Yeah. And it's like, what I started to do is I started to watch like every single fight that like ever came out, from boxing to kickboxing to the MMA fights. And I started to notice there was something different between the champions and everybody else. And it wasn't like, yeah, the technique, sometimes like that'll stand out, but it's really not that. The biggest part was always the mental.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it. And I started to see it when people were weighing in, when they had the face off, when they were walking out, as their names were being announced during the fight. And during the fight, it starts to be a little more obvious to when like you see one person imposing their will more. But if you really pay attention, you can see that happening a lot more in the beginning. And then that's what got me to really make an agreement with myself that I'm going to focus on the mental, because the physical is absolutely easy. If you do enough reps, you can gain the physical attributes of speed and power, but nobody works on the mental. And that's what actually separates the champions from everybody else. And that's what got me to maximize the time of my training and then close that gap. And I became a champion. I started, I want to say within 2 years.
Wow.
And I became a black belt. Usually it takes about 10 years. I got it in 5.
Wow.
I was competing as much as possible in jiu-jitsu before MMA because I never did any individual sports. Like I did baseball growing up. Did a little bit of football, didn't fully understand the rules. And it's completely different to compete as an individual than with a team. With a team, you can feed off of everybody's energy. When you compete by yourself, although you have friends and family and team supporting you, it's still you by yourself when it's time.
Right.
And that was a whole process of like some frustration. Because I knew of my potential, I didn't accept anything less than dominating somebody. And if that didn't happen, I would go into like these like deep, dark holes. And what that got to show me was just like, okay, something is off, because you know, it's not just like an imaginary thought. You know your ability. That's why you're hard on yourself about this. And that's why you feel this way about this loss. So what is off? And I tried every single way you can imagine to approach competition. I tried being calm. I was too calm. I tried being angry and like listening to all this music. And I was like, I was moving without purpose. I was like, all right, like I want to like control this person, hurt this person, but there was no direction to it. It was just like a wildfire. So that didn't work. And then I tried, let's upbeat and be happy. And it's just like, that didn't work because now I'm not fully concentrated on so it was finding the balance. And for me, what the balance was absolute presence. In absolute presence, there's no emotion. I'm not tied to any outcome. I'm just really focused on what's happening in front of me right here, right now. And this gets my undivided attention. This is my life, as if my life depends on it, because it literally does. Not from a competition point of view, but there's literally nothing else happening other than this moment in front of me. And if I give this all of my focus and all of my attention, then it will give me that outcome that I'm giving it that focus and attention to. And that's something that brought me all the way to being a champion. And because going into being a champion, that's where I fractured my arm. So I was literally training in the cast for that fight camp.
Wow.
And then I dominated and got that belt.
Wow. Even in a cast. Wow. Incredible.
There's videos of me at my Muay Thai gym, like hitting the bag, kicking. So it's like, okay, like I can't move this arm, but I can move the rest of my body.
Wow.
And when I tore my ACL, which was about 2 years before that, I tore my ACL like in a jiu-jitsu competition, and I did that entire recovery by myself. I was in my apartment, and that's why I started to really dive deep into the mental side of things. Because I had the determination, but I could feel, okay, if I can't move my body, I still need to close this gap. Because if I don't close this gap, then when I get back, now that gap is even larger. So I started to watch fights, and I started to see what my favorite fighters were doing. And then I would try to imagine if I could feel what muscles are being engaged to throw a specific kick, to throw a punch. And then I would just feel the motion within my body. And by the time I came back, the doctor told me at the time it would take me 2 years. I came back in 9 months.
Wow.
And then when I came back, I came back actually better than when I got out, because I kept doing all these mental reps. And then what that showed me is what anybody else says about my experience is not true at all. I have literally no limits, which eventually led to my nickname of Limitless.
Yes.
And it got me to a way of closing the gap even quicker, because before it was just giving all my time, giving my training as much focus as possible. But then when I found I can do mental reps of physical movement in combination with that level of focus, I can do 20 reps before I even do one physical rep.
Right.
So I closed the gap so much quicker.
And it's like the body doesn't really know the difference if you're doing it all in your mind, right? The mind, it's all mental anyway, right? So it's like advanced visualization techniques, and the body just records it as like you're doing it, and you're doing it, and you're doing it.
Yeah. And that's what got me to really hone in on the importance of sensation. Because it's not to say like thoughts are important, but the most important thing is how something makes you feel. You never forget how something makes you feel, no matter what it is. And that's what got me to hone into that level of presence for a competition. But it also got me to pay attention to how everything is making me feel. Because like I was saying, like before, it was like, okay, eating clean was avoiding bad foods.
Right.
But then that transition to how is what I'm eating making me feel? How is what I'm watching making me feel? How is what I'm listening to making me feel? And it's tapping into what I see the purpose of imagination is you're creating something that doesn't exist. So if you have unlimited potential and you know your potential, you're creating a version of you that doesn't exist, but you can feel that. So if you can do things that feel like that, you're on track to become that version of you. That's what I started to discover through martial arts.
Interesting. It sounds like you were feeling your way into the future version of yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. And is that something that you still practice today outside of martial arts?
Yeah.
Cool.
That was something that that hidden spiritual side of martial arts started to reveal.
Right.
And that's what led to the retirement, which was like, I would say out of all the processes I've ever had of letting go, that was the biggest one. Because it was letting go of who I thought I was.
Identity.
Yeah. Because like I became amateur champion, and I had the agreement before I turned pro I would defend my title so I could really claim being a champion, then go professional. Right. I did that. And then going into lockdown.
Can I pause you right there for 1
Yeah.
second? I want to go back. How did it feel for you to become a champion? What was the feeling like for you?
I wasn't tuned into feeling yet.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So at that point, is it all just mental override and it's just do, or?
It was. That was great pause, by the way. And that's why you did this.
Yeah.
So I was so fixated on becoming that potential version of me that I was focused on the feeling and the doing of becoming that, not in how I was feeling. So every time like I would win a fight, I never took damage in my fights. I always fought smart. So I would literally look the exact same after a fight.
Wow.
And I would just think to myself like, okay, that wasn't good enough. Because I have this like standard.
Super high bar of expectations for yourself. Yeah.
So like
limitless potential.
Exactly. And I won the title, and there's like pictures of me, like I have it. And it's like,
you're like, whatever.
Yeah. Like my instructor legit in the cage was like, I looked at him, I was just like, I should have finished him. He was like, Mike, you dominated the entire fight.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but it shouldn't have gone to decision. If I truly dominated him, I would have finished him.
Right.
And he was just like, okay, you just won the title.
Yeah.
We could work on this when we get back to training. For now, you've been working up to this.
Enjoy it a little bit.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, but for who I'm becoming and what I need to do. And as I'm saying that, he just like slapped me. He was like, come back.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy.
And I was just like, okay. And then like at that time, like I mastered the art of like smiling, even though inside like I'm doing loops.
Right.
And in the process, like there was no point at any time that like I really felt I did it. Like I will work so hard, win these fights, overcome injuries. I would go into fights with like pop ribs and different stuff, and it was just like, okay, like yeah, I'm supposed to do this.
Another day at the office.
Yeah. And even when I became pro, it wasn't like, all right, like I'm pro. It was still there was always something more to do.
Right. And
it actually wasn't until I stepped away that I started to really acknowledge the stuff that I did and the stuff that I'm doing.
What was it in that space that did you see of like why weren't you allowing yourself to celebrate, or why weren't you allowing yourself to be like, tap yourself on the back and say, nice, Mike, I did it. Like what was the stopping you from doing that? Did you see that?
It was never enough.
I see.
It was never enough because what I didn't acknowledge about myself is how we are as human beings. We always want more. It's our natural state of being.
Right.
And like, even like when we move to an apartment, it's like when we first get there, it's like, oh my God, this place is amazing. After a couple months, it's like, well, I want this to be better.
Yeah.
I want that to be better. It's time to move. And like that cycle repeats.
Right.
And when I first started training, I was super excited. But then once I really started to hone into the mental aspect as to like what's necessary to become the champion, nothing else mattered other than becoming the champion. But as I would win and be the champion for that day, my definition of a champion evolved.
Right.
So I never allowed myself to not catch up, but just to acknowledge the progress along the way.
Right. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah. It was always just like, again, that nothing was ever enough.
Right. Focused on the destination, but not enjoying the steps that you're making along the journey.
Yeah. And like, even when I would get a compliment from like, either from interviews or people that I train with, and be like, you're really, really high level, like you're elite. I'm just like it'll be like a quick, cool.
Yeah. and moving on.
And moving on. Yeah.
Interesting. From what I get there, Mike, there's a lot of really amazing things that did come from the martial arts, you know, the presence, and you're very present. I felt that from you. First time we met, this guy's got deep presence, which is an amazing thing that still a lot of people don't have or struggle with these days, focus. It enabled you to focus in on things and really, even though you weren't, enjoying the journey, but you set a target and you didn't stop until you went out and did that. The visualization techniques of closing the gap and doing amazing, things in a short amount of time, like basically collapsing timelines and getting maximum potential in a short amount of time. Yeah. This is a real skill that I think anybody that could, tap into that would really benefit their life. And you got in great physical shape, and then you started the mental aspects of it as well, the mental health aspects and killer instinct and all these kind of things, which are amazing things. So definitely want to commend you on all that. Like, these are great things to take into the next chapter of yourself, right? So, all right. So then you walk us, you reach this champion status. It's not enough. Lockdowns happen. You got a lot of time to reflect. And now you're realizing what? Walk us through this part where it's like, okay, into this from one chapter to the next.
So going into lockdown, every year I kept increasing my capacity. So the way for me that I work is do it to your best ability, as effective as possible, as efficient as possible. Then you increase capacity, and then you just repeat that process. That's how I would do more and more and more. And fight camps for MMA is short notice, might be 2 weeks, but average is like a 6 to 8 week camp. Just because there's so many disciplines you have to fit in, you have to cut weight. I would average cut 30 pounds per fight.
Wow.
Yeah.
What weight did you fight at?
First I fought at 135. So I was walking around like at 160, 165.
Wow.
Then as I started to lift more, because before I was just doing my own workouts, then I started to work with some coaches, and then I put on enough muscle that it was getting harder to cut the weight to get out to 35, to the point where I'd be like in saunas for like 3-4 hours, and like then I went up to 145. And what ended up happening was I was going into COVID, and I was looking to do about 6 fights in that year. So before I did 4, that was my agreement. I'm going to do 4 fights within the year. I did 5. I was like, cool, now I'm about to do 6. And I just had a fight, and I was already getting lined up for the next one. So like I said, I don't take damage in my fights. And the lockdown happened. I didn't even care what was happening. I didn't care about my well-being. The first thing I said when I heard about lockdown was, I'm going to find a way to train every single day. That was the very first thing that happened. Yeah. And then things just worked out to where like I was helping my instructor with something and ended up being able to train with him and my teammate. And nice. I still didn't fully realize lockdown, because there was nothing different from lockdown than my everyday life. I would go training and I would go home. So it wasn't until I was on the way to meet with my instructor and there was literally nobody out. I was like, at first I was like, oh, this is nice, no traffic. But then I started to hear different stories of stuff of people falling into deep depression from just being inside all day, not doing anything. And I was just like, okay, I'm okay with being unique. I'm okay with being different. But if a good amount of the world is feeling depressed and being affected by being so isolated, and I think this is normal, something might be a little off. That kind of like planted a little seed.
Okay, in yourself?
In myself, yeah. I was just like, okay. And then I would hear, after like some training sessions, hear my instructor talk with my teammate about like, them going to Costa Rica, because like my instructor is world renowned. So he would do this parts of the year where he does seminars throughout the world.
Cool.
And then I would vicariously travel through him by just asking him all these questions. How was it? What did you see? What was it like? And like, I would always want to travel more. And then, but I was so focused on what I was doing. It wasn't until I had nothing else to do, because now my training cut down to like 2 hours a day, 1 to 2 hours a day compared to the entire day.
Wow.
That now I got to hear them talk about that, and I would think like, damn, like I can't remember the last time I traveled, and I don't have any traveling in mind. If I wasn't training, I'll be watching an interview or I'll be watching fights or I'll be doing something fighting related, and then I'll go to sleep because I was just that locked into what I was doing.
Right.
So then that planted another seed. And I'm sitting with this, thinking about it, and then I'll be at home and I'll watch fights, and repeat the process and watch techniques, practice some stuff myself. But then I still have the entire day. And then I notice like not feeling the best. And I always thought like this was just fuel because anytime, what also got me the name Limitless is like in training and in strength and conditioning, regardless of how I felt, I never would say I felt tired. You would never ever hear me say that because I would just tap into what I can use as fuel to push further.
Right.
So my mantra that I would say is like, I'm limitless, powerful, beyond measure.
Nice.
And like, I'll just keep going and going and going.
Right.
And then.
And it worked.
Yeah. And just to make sure it wasn't anxious thinking, I took a fight during lockdown. And I was just like, because I don't make any decisions from any outside influence. It's always me. So I took a fight, and then during the process of that, I would also reflect on, again, hearing my instructor talk with my teammate and then realizing like, I haven't really seen family and friends, because once the second I started training, if I had nothing to do with training, I wouldn't see any family, any friends. I wouldn't go to weddings. I wouldn't go to birthdays. Wow. Nobody would see me.
Locked in.
Unless I was hurt.
Okay, yeah.
So like every time my friends would see me, they were like, I have mixed emotions because like, I don't want to see you hurt, but I'm kind of happy because it's the only time I get to see you.
Right.
So everybody was really excited when I tore my knee.
Right.
So then going into my last fight, I couldn't do any striking because that place was shut down. So I legit had my teammate just hold the pad and I would coach myself through the striking aspect. And went into that fight, dominated the person. And I still felt the same, but there was a valuable gem inside that fight. So going into that fight, there was a previous fight where I lost by decision, and all the person did was just like, he would take me down and just hold me. He wouldn't open up. Anytime he'll open up, he'll feel me threaten a submission, and then he'll hunker down again. So what people don't know is for MMA judges, they don't know anything about grappling. So then, that ended up going to a decision of him winning because he was on top. So this person in my last fight tried to do the same thing. But in this fight, I was allowed to throw elbows on the ground. I wasn't allowed to do that in my previous fight. So I cut him up. And then the last few seconds of the fight, I thought, okay, this guy, he was like a national wrestler from Albania, and like he had these accolades. So I was like, okay, the judges, this like similar fight where the guy was just holding me on the ground. Although he's beat up, I'm not. Just to make sure, I'm going to go in for a takedown to capitalize. Right. To solidify. So literally I hear the 10-second clap. I rush in. I duck under, grab him, and then he tries to turn it to like a hip throw. I feel him do that, and I jump to over accelerate, and I spike him on his head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So then I'm working towards his back, and he feels that, so he's holding onto my head in a headlock, and then like I'm turning his body, my back's against the cage, my head pops out, I go behind him, the fight's done. And in my head, I'm like, I hope the judges saw that. I hope everybody saw that like I was on his back, I'm the one that spiked them, because it's like it all happened fast. It was tough to see. So it wasn't until I rewatched the fight that everybody thought he spiked me on my head.
Oh, geez.
So then when the fight was done, he gets the decision, and like I'm telling everybody, I'm like, I spiked him. And everybody's like, it's okay, Mike. Like, it's all right. You'll get the next one. And like, just let it go. And everybody's thinking like I'm being sore about it. I'm just like, all right, like I know what I did. I can't convince anybody else no matter what happens. The second I let it go, I get a picture from the photographer. He caught the moment of that spike.
Wow.
And there's a picture of me, and I posted it. I'm literally holding him. We're both upside down, and he's on his neck sideways, and I'm halfway up his back, so I'm far away from the ground. Right. And then I posted it, and I was just like, this fight showed me a lot. Most important thing is it doesn't matter what anybody else says. What matters is what you know to be true. And that got me to really cater to that connection to me. So I took 2021 a little differently, and I was just like, okay, like I'll take an extra day off, because I will always train 6 to 7 days a week. And I took the day off, and it took about a month for me to really take that day off, because I would feel bad and I'll do 7 days to make it up. So then I tried taking a week off, still felt the same way. Then my instructor saw me, he was just like, you look burnt out. How about you come to me to Iceland, I'm doing a seminar there. You just got to get your flight, and you get to just like take a break and switch everything up completely. I was just like, okay. Because I didn't know what else to do. Sure. Because like on the inside, that's how I felt. But on the outside, I was running on pure discipline. So I was still leveling up in training. So to everybody else, everything looks great. Like I'm the best at where I'm training. It's just, I'm just going.
But inside there was something a bit off.
Yeah. Like I literally was just going through the motions. And I had no choice but to still do everything top level, because I wouldn't accept anything less. So I genuinely didn't care about how I felt. And then I went to Iceland. I remember on the plane, I was thinking like, this is what I want to do. I want to travel. I want to see the world. And then I got to experience Iceland, and it was like 22 hours of daylight. I'm like, this is awesome. I didn't even know this existed. And that's when and I still had to train a little bit jujitsu, which because, the seminar was for that. So I still couldn't fully step away. But my instructor acknowledged that and would take me sightseeing. And again, that would come up like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to relieve this pressure that I have on myself and just enjoy life. And then that's when the thought came of like, what if you retire? And I would never allow myself to even form those words to make that sentence. And then I realized I was more afraid to retire than to continue fighting. And the main reason why I fought was to also conquer my fears. Right. So I knew if I kept fighting, to everybody else, I'll be this brave warrior. But to me, I would be a coward, because I know that I'm running away from what life would be without fighting. And as I sat with that, I sat with all the possible things that may come up that I could think of. And I was just like, okay, I got to jump into the unknown. I got to jump into what's scary. And I retired, and I got the exact feedback that I sat with. It was some people that was just like, I'm happy that you're following, what matters to you and what makes you happy. And the other people were like, what are you doing? You're so close to the UFC. You have these avenues to the UFC. You're dominating. Like, you're the best at the place that you train. Isn't it wasted potential? Are you doing it too soon? But because I sat with it, I was at peace. I was like, nah, this is what feels right. And then I did a meditation after I announced it and had those conversations. And there was this thought that came up that just wouldn't leave me alone, wouldn't even let me finish the meditation. And it said, share everything that you learned along the way. And then that's what got me to where we are now.
Wow. It sounds like, Mike, that you were obsessed for a while.
Yeah.
And that is what a big part of it, what made you so good at what you were doing, right? But then at the same time, there was something that you weren't looking at because you were so obsessed. And it was just keep going in this direction, almost like a tunnel vision. But then you're missing what's going on in the background of this journey.
Yeah.
For someone that was, let's say getting into martial arts or a sport or just something that they really want to excel at, would you say get obsessed about it and that will get you there? Or what advice would you give to someone that was really going after a dream of, individual success?
I would say get obsessed about you. Because what I found is it wasn't the thing. It wasn't the title. It wasn't like the accolades. It wasn't any of that. I would bring the biggest crowds to my fights. So all my tickets and then some. Wasn't that. If there's something that you want to do, if you're obsessed with you, you're obsessed with, why are you doing it? What is it making you feel? And if you just tune into how it's making you feel, you get to recharge yourself, because the main thing is you want to feel something. And you think this is the thing that's going to make you feel it. But you have to be present enough to feel it. If not, it's all going to pass you by, and then you're going to be like, why did I do any of this?
Right.
So the main thing is, yeah, you can be obsessed with what you love to do, but as long as you're aware that it's still you. You know, there's, and when you tap into being obsessed with you in that way, using this as an avenue to express you, then that's where you get to tap into that uniqueness to this thing that you could bring. If not, then you kind of get blended to everybody else.
Well said. Well said, my friend. So you go on this journey of self-discovery, right? And you're traveling, you're doing things you've never done before, and all this newness is going on. And I can imagine that in that time, you're feeling really alive. And you're feeling, and like God is living through you, or spirit is living through you, because now you're on this whole other path. And I remember we talked about this, that you did ayahuasca, you sat with ayahuasca, and possibly some other psychedelics. How did psychedelics play a factor in this new version, from going from professional fighter into this self-aware man?
It cut the noise. I got to just hear me. And that's what I feel psychedelics does, is like, it cuts all the background noise of like, because as we grow up, we don't acknowledge that like you're hearing everybody else's perspective. And as much as we want to be individuals, the reason we want to be individuals is because we're kind of tired of hearing everybody else's perspective, and we have our own to offer.
Right.
So I feel like psychedelics kind of like puts that on mute, and it's like, how do you feel? This is how I feel about it. That's why it's so resonating to do those medicines, because it's just like, oh, everybody says the same thing. It's me. It's me the entire time.
Right.
We're one. And it's just like, because you're just connecting with you without anybody else or anything else to take into consideration. A lot of times what I notice is like, in asking somebody, how do you feel? And there's an aspect that they genuinely want to share, but then there's like this quick buffer of like, how can I say this without hurting somebody's feelings? Right?
Sure.
It's like, how do you feel? And then tapping into that clear channel, I feel like psychedelics provides just a clear channel, with nothing else in the way.
Yeah, well said. It cuts out the noise. I totally get that. That's something I've said as well, is it attunes you to the signal, you know, and I believe God or the universe, higher power, infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it, has a signal, a direct signal to us, and we're like an antenna. And it's very challenging these days, especially, to tap into that signal, unless you know how, unless you take the time and space and practice. And psychedelics can definitely help just attune you to that signal, where now you have like a direct channel to this higher intelligence, and now you're tapping in. And if you could sit in that space long enough, you'll be able to get these visions and messages. And if you're fortunate enough, you'll be able to communicate them to other people, because sometimes it's just like a real fire hose of information. I'm wondering, in that self-discovery time, Mike, did you or do you have a favorite psychedelic medicine that's really helped you along the way?
A favorite psychedelic. I would say it's kind of, it depends on what I'm using it for.
Sure. Different tools for different outcomes.
Like for me, mushrooms are amazing for having a degree of awareness with introspection, because ayahuasca is fantastic, but sometimes there could be so much to take in that the presence to take all that with you, that's why I like this such a long integration process. Whereas like with mushrooms, it's just like you're present throughout the entire ride.
Right.
And you could take more of that with you, especially like with microdosing.
For sure.
It's like, I would say that's one of my favorite things to do from time to time is just like microdose and just like dive deeper into thoughts than I normally, and I love diving deep. So it's just I get to go even deeper. So there's more. And so I would say like that's my favorite. Sometimes I would do it with cannabis, but that has to be microdosed, or else like that has the tendency to take you off further, and then now you take nothing back with you.
Right.
So that's what I enjoy about mushrooms. It's like, even if for some reason you take a little bit more than microdosing, like whatever, as you're fine tuning the amount, you're still present enough with what you're experiencing that you can still take it with you.
Well said. Beautiful. I agree. For me, mushrooms, it almost forces me to be present. You know, if I got so many things on my mind or all these things on my to-do list or checklist, it's like just puts all of that on pause, and it's like right here, right now, here we go. And oftentimes it shows me, like a great teacher, it shows me what I need to work on, you know, and sometimes it's not so pleasant. Sometimes it's not so comfortable, but it's necessary. It's not what I want to experience, but it's what I need to experience. And that's what I really love about mushrooms. I'd say my personal favorite is probably LSD, microdosing LSD, or even a large journey of LSD, although that takes a long time. But it just sends me into my creative mind and my imagination, like we talked about. And I love playing around with the imagination and coming up with new ideas. And then because I'm such a doer, I'll actually bring them into the world and manifest them. But yeah, psychedelics can be amazing tools to tap into the presence. And that's one thing we definitely have in common, both very into presence and being present. I'm wondering, Mike, what's, you know, speaking of presence, what's alive for Mike Gonzalez now? Like, what's alive in your heart? What are you really excited about? And what are you up to these days? What's alive for you, Mike?
What's alive for me is my favorite thing, which is helping people remember who they are.
Tell me more.
So I let go, well, I thought I let go of my fighter identity when I retired. And then I realized I've been carrying this name, Solace in Combat.
Right.
It's a dope name.
It is. You have it tattooed, right, as well?
It's down my spine.
Yeah.
And the reason I have it tattooed down my spine is because, so that word, it just started with an email. And I just put those words together because it described at the time why I got into fighting in one phrase, Solace in Combat. And I was finding solace in combat. Then when I retired, it's like, okay, I found solace in combat. And then when I transitioned into coaching, I'm helping other people find solace in whatever they're in combat with. But then I had a friend shine a light and saying that solace in combat is a cool name. But one, you're confusing everybody because now everybody thinks they're going to learn some kind of combat from you.
Sure.
And then, and for me, you know, that part of me was just like, well, I'm going to show everybody what it means. Every time I explain it, everybody's like, oh, that's awesome.
Right.
But the other thing that was also explained by that friend was, for you to have solace in combat, that means you always have to be in combat with something to find solace in.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was just like, huh,
True.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just like, and that got to show me I was still holding on to that fighter identity because I didn't want to let go of that name. Because the same way I was just like, okay, who am I without fighting? It's like, I've had this name for since 2010, 2011. Who am I without this name?
Right.
I was just like, all right, if I let go of this name, I get to remember who I am. And then that's what kind of started to now claim this brand that I created for me, which is Path of Remembrance, which is what I take everybody down. And because it's not really me doing anything, I'm just kind of nudging you, guiding you to help you remember who you are. And that's something that like I never got to fully enjoy and experience my title wins, when I won medals and matches, and every time I help somebody, that's what I imagine the title fights felt like. And I feel that every single time and then some, because it just feels so good where like me being tuned into somebody and I could feel them shift and I could feel them. I'm like,
it's very rewarding.
Yeah. So that's my favorite thing right now. It's just helping people remember who they are.
Very cool.
Yeah.
When you say, I think I know where you're going with this, but let's dive in there. When you say helping remember people who they are, do you see a lot of similarities when someone remembers who they are, even though everybody's individual? Is it a similar type experience?
Yeah. So a few layers to it, but anytime we experience any form of resistance, anything that feels uncomfortable or negative, that's the thing that makes you forget who you are. And that who you are, essentially, if you boil down to it, is your love. And you actually want to express love unconditionally. So the turbulence you experience is the conditions that you have or you picked up along the way. So the way to remember who you are is it's a path of remembrance of coming back to you. If you give yourself that unconditional love, there's no conditions to apply to anybody else because you're not concerned about that flow being cut off. That's why the conditions is there. You know, it's until death do us part. You better keep loving me or else
it's very conditional.
I have this paperwork. Yeah.
Right. It's very conditional.
Yeah. So it's and again, it's going back to that obsession question. If you're obsessed with you, because if you think about it, you're living life through your eyes. You're experiencing life through the eyes of Alex. And the way that I see it is like, in a playful, imaginative way, is like, I see all of us. It's like, we were on the other side at one point, and we're seeing everybody live as humans. It's like, man, that would be awesome. Like, I want to do that. If I had the ability to live life, I would live life this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. And then over time, as you experience those conditions, it makes you forget that you have the ability to live life exactly how you want. And you're actually doing that. But with taking everybody into consideration, you forget that. So just remembering, hey, you're living life. And you get to live life how you want. You're living a life how you think a life should be lived. What does that look like to you? Take everybody else out of the picture. To you, what does that look like? Now potential seems way more attainable than it did before.
Well said. What's coming up for me on some of these conditions that I've uncovered in the last little while, that I was living, under these false pretenses or these false conditions that I believed. One of them, for example, was that I need to do something or I need to achieve something to feel a certain way, right? And then I think a lot of people get caught up in that, and I was definitely caught up in that for a long time, when it's really like, no, erase the doing. It's just about being. We're human beings.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was one condition that I've removed lately. I'm wondering if what's a condition maybe that you've went through or experienced with one of your students or something like that. What's another common condition that people are under the illusion of, and then when it's another way to get closer to this unconditional love of remembering who you truly are?
Rest.
Yeah.
Because again, like that obsessive part will come up, and it's like, okay, now I have to do. How much can I do? And it's just like, okay, like I feel a little tired, but I'll rest when I do
ignore
this.
the rest and just do. Keep going.
And it's just like acknowledging you know exactly what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we'll outsource that. What do you think I should do?
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling this. Like, do you think I should? And a lot of times people will answer their question in their question. You think I should rest? I feel a little tired. I'm like, maybe. It's like acknowledging that you know exactly what you need.
Mm-hmm.
If you pay attention to yourself and you listen to yourself, then although it may be out of the norm for you to take a nap, I don't really take naps.
Mm-hmm.
I do the stuff, but what if you just, that nap that you feel called to take is the rest that you need to give you the energy for what's about to come.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really paying attention and not holding yourself to a standard, because the standard that you have is most likely in comparison to others around you.
Right.
Focus on your path.
Mm-hmm.
Your path is all that matters. Your path is the only one that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
You can
True.
look at other people and their paths around you. You could be inspired by it, but don't compare your path to theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just really pay attention as to what am I needing right now?
Mm-hmm.
What am I wanting to do? If you really pay attention to that, you have so much energy for the things that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
The times that we fall into like those hard moments, there's some pockets of kind of ignoring yourself leading up to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's good because you want to know, hey, I just wasn't paying attention to me.
Right.
Cool. Now I know.
There's
Moving
awareness
forward.
there. Yeah. That's like the first step is you're being aware, and that's okay. Don't be hard on yourself.
Yeah.
You just realized you uncovered something that you weren't paying attention. So that's okay. You're on the track. You're back on the path to remember.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's the main thing I say to everybody. No matter what you say to me, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Because this is like the other big one that I see.
Mm-hmm.
It's whenever an uncomfortable emotion comes up, it's like, I don't want to feel that. Like that's wrong. And it's just like, but now that creates like turbulence within you.
Right.
So the way I compare it is like, would you rather have a friend that's like, yes, whatever you say, yes, of course, you said it, yes. Or would you rather have the friend that's like, I love you so much, I'm willing to tell you something that's gonna make you not like me, but it's gonna help you propel even further than ever before. Probably want this friend.
Of course.
So you can see.
That's a real friend.
Right? So it's like you can see that negative emotion is like that friend. It loves you so much. It's making you aware as to how you're thinking, how it's making you feel. It's taking you off of the trajectory that you want to go. So it's almost like, hey, this is what you're thinking. This is what's happening. And it's willing to take the fact. You're like, I don't want to feel this way. And so if you just see like that emotion, that feeling loves you that much that it's willing to tolerate you not liking it or loving it, you get to love it more. Now, as you take it and you become whole, now you're not splitting your energy within you. You go so much further than ever before.
Wow. Brilliant, Mike. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think I really felt that. I'm sure the people will as well. That's a beautiful way to say it, that these uncomfortable emotions are really our friend trying to show us the way. And all we got to do is feel into them, sit with them, right? And just feel into it. And then eventually it all turns into love anyway, because it's all on the spectrum of love in some sort of capacity.
Yeah. And it's like, no matter what, you're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
That's the main thing we're concerned about. It's like, I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
Like, no, it's feedback.
Feedback, yeah.
Like, how else would you know that a thought is not serving you? Or like, how else would you know the direction to go without occasionally not knowing the wrong way? That's like the rumble strips on the highway. Like, without the rumble strip, you're gonna hit the guardrail.
Right.
You'll probably just go off. Oh damn, I didn't realize.
Right. Yes, they're keeping you in check.
Yeah. So sometimes, like, if you're texting on your phone, that's okay, because when you hear the you're like, oh, let me put that phone down. Without that,
Right.
Yeah.
So these emotions are working like the guardrail and bringing us back to the now and remembering who we are.
Yeah. And that's the way that you get to realize that you're not alone, that it's you with you the entire time.
You with you. What do you mean by that, Mike?
So you with you, it's you're living life through the eyes. I'm living life through the eyes of Mike. I get to feel what he feels. I get to be aware of his thoughts. So I'm with Mike in this life experience.
Like the observer?
Yeah. And it's in that sense, if there's ever a time, like there's times where I feel like I'm not seen. But if I really pay attention before that, I haven't been seeing myself. I've been jumping into work, or I've been checking my phone right away. So there hasn't been any pocket where I got to sit with me. So me not feeling seen by other people is letting me know, hey, you haven't been paying attention to me this entire time, and I'm literally with you.
Yeah. There you go. There we go. So he's sending a signal again, sending a sign to go and pay attention internally.
Yeah. Right. And it's again, how does not feeling seen feel? It sucks. You know, it feels uncomfortable, but that's you getting your attention. This is how Mike feels. Mike doesn't feel seen. If you see him and acknowledge him, like, you've been doing awesome. Like, look at where you are. Look at what you're doing. Like, I'm proud of who you become. I'm proud of the fact that you take care of me. You nourish my body. You give me the food when I'm hungry. Because sometimes, I'll admit, before I would do like some work and I'll get so locked into what I'm doing, I wouldn't eat. It's just like, I have to do this and do this and do this and do this and do this. And it'll be like 8 o'clock. I'm like, oh snap, I haven't eaten all day because I'm just so locked in. So it's just like, and there's times I'll be so locked into work. It's like, I know I have to pee. My legs are shaking, but it's like, okay, I still got to finish this. So it's like acknowledging, like, thank you for feeding me. Thank you for giving me water when I'm thirsty.
Right.
Thank you for taking me, taking me to the bathroom when I need to use the bathroom. Because the same way, if you have like a dog, and the dog needs to go to the bathroom, it's so thankful that you open the door to let it go. It's so thankful that you gave it water when it's thirsty. So thankful when you give it food. And you see the amount of unconditional love that dog gives you. It's the same thing. It's just, we kind of take for granted that we're in the body, and we forget that we're living with ourselves the whole time. So it's like that same love that you feel from the dog. And that's why every time you see a dog, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah,
like,
it's the best.
Yeah. You can get that same feeling from you.
Right. It's really giving it to yourself, giving it to your soul, it sounds like, or your, or thanking your conscious self, thanking your body, thanking your mind. You're all on the same vessel together, kind of thing, right? And yeah, as you said that, I could even see for myself how sometimes it goes unnoticed, just taking it for granted, all these things, and the soul is probably, wouldn't mind some recognition every once in a while for getting us to these places.
Yeah, and it's like, the way I see it is like, I'm acknowledging the body, and I'm just the soul that's like, you're doing awesome. You're doing so good. It's just like, in that experience, you're so full, you don't need anything from anybody. And now everybody's free to do as they wish. Right,
because you filled your own cup. You're not there with an empty cup looking to get filled by other people.
Yeah. So it's like, there's any time of any turbulence. That's why, like, the common theme in like self-development is the whole letting go.
Yeah, like you said earlier, once you surrendered, the photographer sent you the picture right there. Boom. It's like, here you go. You have to get out of your own way.
Yeah. And it's like, the visual that I see, because for me, like, I'm very visual. It's like, I did art in school. So it's like, I see, it's like, the thing that you're holding on to it takes so much of your attention and so much of your energy that like that takes all of your attention off of you. That's why this feels so uncomfortable, because now you're no longer paying attention to you, you're paying attention to this thing. Once you let it go, you're not holding on to it, you get to come back to you.
There's a lot more space for
Yeah.
things, for magic to happen, and universe to do its thing, God to do its thing.
Yeah.
Not holding on it with white knuckles and trying to force it.
Exactly. And like, also, we emanate energy, we emanate our presence. So like, again, that was the thing that like drew me to you when I saw you at Garen's retreat. Was just like, you wasn't trying to be seen, you were just being. And then I could feel you. So it's like, but whenever we hold on to something, all the energy is concentrated, so that field of being felt is all condensed here. So now that's why also you can't really be seen and acknowledged by other people. You're pulling your energy back. If you let go, you just be, now you're being felt again. And it just feels good to be you. And everybody gets to feel you, feel the genuine version of you. And that's what allows like ease. That's what allows that. That you can feel like, that's why it feels so good to let go, because it's the letting go aspect, but you're letting yourself go. You're letting yourself be, like you're letting yourself to experience life again. That's why we have all these senses: smell, taste, touch, sight. It's literally for you to experience as much life as possible. That's why you could feel the different sensations between your hands and your feet. And if something lands on your skin, you're supposed to experience as much life as you possibly can. But whenever you're holding on to something, this has all of your attention. Now it's almost like your body's numb. You can't feel anything else anymore. You're not experiencing life. It's not as fun. If you let it go, oh, I can smell and taste and touch, and
back into the sensory.
It's
very profound. Mike, you've shared so many great gems, great codes, I like to call them today. And a code for me, I've said this many times on the podcast, but a code for me is like a new perspective. It's like an epiphany where you get this new perspective, and now you have a new mind, and now you're looking in a new direction, and then you're on a new path. You've shared so many good codes here today, so thank you. I appreciate them. I'm sure the audience did as well.
Thank you.
If you had one more code to share that's impacted your life, and you would hope that it could make an impact in somebody else's life out there, what code would that be?
It'll be a question.
Cool.
Because the question unlocks the code.
Yes.
Because you already know the answer to this question, which is, aren't you ready to become who you know yourself to be?
Yeah. If not now, when? Right? The time is now.
Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah. You're more than ready. A lot of times we feel like there's something I need to do that.
Just go.
You're ready.
You're ready. Yeah. It's just a choice, right? It's really, I don't know if anyone's ever really ready, or maybe they are. It's just choosing. Just go. Just do it. We talked about that with the podcast. You're like, how long have you wanted to do this podcast? And I was like, I wanted to do it for years. And I was like, you know what? Just go. Just do the podcast. Do the thing.
Yeah. And it's like, there's no tomorrow. And like, we have this idea of like becoming that potential version of us when it comes to like New Year's. New year, new me, brand new fresh start, or tomorrow's a brand new day. All tomorrow is this moment, this moment, this moment. Same thing with New Year's. So if you just put all of your attention to this moment, every moment builds up to a minute to an hour to a day to a week to a month to a year to the rest of your life. So if you create your dream life, you start by creating your dream moment, and then every moment that follows. So you've been ready. You just start with this moment. How would you like it to be? And then you'll just see things just happen the way that you intend them to, because you're just that aware for the life that you're living.
I love it. Mike, it's been such a pleasure having you on here. Such an aware guy. Man, it's been great. I have one more question, just out of pure curiosity.
Yeah.
Now you've traveled, you've met all kinds of interesting people here in Austin. If you had the opportunity to have dinner with one historical person,
Okay.
who would it be and why?
One historical person.
It could be dead or alive.
I would say I would have dinner with myself as a teenager.
Oh, wow. I love this answer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I would love to hear his perspective at that time with the minimal amount of noise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Would you give him any codes or tips, or would just let him be, or?
I feel like there'll be some codes for me.
Cool.
Yeah. Because I would definitely share some stuff that I experienced along the way.
Uh-huh.
But there's this idea that we have to teach kids stuff, but that's because we don't really give them that much space to let us know what they're thinking. And because there's not much interference from the outside world, there's some genuine brand new thoughts that they have. And it's just, if you kind of get them to just make it make sense to your mind,
Right.
you're like, oh snap,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. There's an innocence there.
Yeah. So it's just, I feel like that'd be something very, very different. And because it's a younger version of me, I'll be able to understand it, even though they may feel like that version of me may feel like it's not making sense. It's be like, I'm you, I got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Love that answer. Mike, where can people find you, tap in with you, work with you, all the things? What's the best way they could find you?
So the best way to find me is my website is pathofremembrance.com, and on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, I also have YouTube. I'm getting that going. It's at Mike Remembrance.
At Mike Remembrance. Awesome, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on, man. It's been a pleasure. I love getting to know you more and more and diving deep. So this has been great. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. It's been an awesome time as always.
Thank you.